Salamun alaikum everyone, my name is Sakina Varani and welcome to the first episode of our show on youth spirituality. This topic is crucial for our lives, and as the followers of the Ahlul Bayt, we all try to increase our spirituality, especially in this holy month of Ramadan. Today we'll introduce what the meaning of spirituality is and why youths such as ourselves struggle to maintain this throughout our daily lives. We have an amazing group of panelists with us for the next few weeks, and if you guys would like to introduce yourself, Mariam, you can go first.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, my name is Mariam Jan Mohammed. I'm a second year medical student at UCL.
Assalamu alaikum, my name is Abid. I'm a second year civil engineering student at Warwick University.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, my name is Nail Musfi. I just graduated from the University of Surrey and I'm currently working for a smart lighting company in London.
Lovely. Before we begin, I think we should take a minute to explore the actual meaning of spirituality. So it's defined as the quality of being concerned with the human spirit or soul, as opposed to the material or physical things. So this is where the shift in our priorities allows us to embrace our spirituality in a more profound way. But this view of spirituality is a little more secular. And as Shia Ithna Ashri, I know that we have a more specific understanding of this. Does anyone want to touch upon this?
I think that the main difference is that in Islam, spirituality isn't just detaching from the material world, which is the focus of Western spirituality, but in Islam, it's also about the emphasis on attaching to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I think it's key to define the difference between spirituality and religiosity. You can be very spiritual and not religious, as we've seen through Western spirituality, but at the same time, you can be very religious but not spiritual at all by following a sort of rules-based religion but not connecting to your Lord. I think that spirituality in Islam is about nurturing a relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and realizing that He is the only source of knowledge and love, and that all the goodness you get in your life comes directly from Him. And I think that when you reach this sort of level, you don't feel the need for external validation and reassurance from other people, because you know that Allah is the source of goodness, and in any problems you have, you turn back to Allah. And I think having this sort of mindset means that all these like petty worries and small problems we have in our day-to-day lives, they sort of fade away, because you know that Allah controls everything and that there's nothing to worry about. And your main focus will become focusing on tawakkul and just relying on Allah and trusting in His plan.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Yeah. So that's the religious sort of aspect of spirituality. But as youth, what does it mean to us?
I think as youth especially, it's really important for us to get connected with our inner selves. You know, our spirituality is in how we develop as youth and as young people, developing as we become, people in society and everything. That is important because that should always be connected to Allah. As Muslims, we want to always be making decisions that are with Allah in mind, with that spirituality in mind, and so it's really important, growing up.
I just wanted to add to Niall's point. I think that one could argue that spirituality in the youth, sort of like our age period, is the most important time to have spirituality, because this is a critical age. Like, this is when you're finding yourself, finding your religion, and it's sort of a make or break. Like, when you're younger, we're taught about rules, and obviously as a child, it's harder to connect with Allah spiritually. But this is really the critical age in finding yourself and learning how to do that, because otherwise, as you get older, you get stuck in your habits, sort of.
Yeah, I totally agree, because at this age, you need to have a critical level of critical thinking, and you need to think about things for yourself, because you're now in a stage of independence. So like at university as well, we're kind of stepping out of like our homes, and we're exposed to different environments, and we need to learn how to just critically think for ourselves from like lectures, loads of other things, and this could formulate our own opinion on any topics, and this is what makes us. It helps us find our purpose, and yeah.
So clearly we all know what spirituality is. So generally we're brought up and we're taught this from our parents and going to mosque, and we're given lectures about this, and we're explained the surface meaning of spirituality. So why is it difficult for us to reach those high levels of spirituality? What are we doing wrong?
I believe that there's a lot of barriers that we have in our lives. There's small little things, whether that be things that we enjoy that might cause barriers. So like even like watching football, like doing anything, there might be small little things that you need to make sure you have the right niyyah as well in anything you do. But there's small barriers, like for example, at university, there's loads of different distractions with like events that may not have uphold correct social hijab. So for example, there's clubbing, the alcohol. There's also other society events that maybe sports societies do, maybe other societies do. That's why you got to make sure that you surround yourself with the right amount, the right kind of people, because like the saying goes, something along the lines of the 5 people you hang around with, the average of the 5 people you hang around with, that's who you are. And that's why you should make sure you keep around the right amount of people, the right kind of people, and you can have critical thinking discussions and learn more about yourself and bounce off ideas to each other, because this will help you like think better and just develop spiritually.
Yeah, I really like what you said about barriers, and I think that self-control sort of this is the age where the self-control and habit making and trying to break the bad habits that we had as young children. I think this is when it comes in now, and we're really challenged with that at university because we have to, make our own schedules. We don't have people on our cases all the time, especially those of us who live out. Like, we have to do everything for ourselves now. So like Mariam said, it's such a crucial age where you're forming exactly who you are through your habits, and trying to be able to create those barriers so that you have enough time for your religion and your spirituality. So obviously all these barriers and the distractions are all around us in the world. We can't escape from them. So how do you think that we can overcome these?
I think that to overcome these barriers, we need to turn all of these negatives of this critical period in our life into positives. So it's definitely true that university can be a big barrier to religion. It's full of temptations and it's a very difficult stage where a lot of people can go astray. But I also think that university is the most incredible time where you can find yourself. And I really, really believe that it's such a catalyst for spiritual growth. Personally, so I lived out for university, and I think that living out just gives you this incredible experience because you have so much time by yourself, and that's something that you might not be used to when you're at home. And I think that having that time, it really gives you the time to reflect and learn more about yourself and sort of like just come to like a focus, because sometimes that's quite hard at home. But when you have that time by yourself, especially on the weekends when maybe you would usually be with your family, and you have that time now to yourself, you really can prioritize the things that are important to you and put a lot more effort into your spiritual growth. And also, I think another thing that's really important about university is ABSOC. I think ABSOC is an incredible way that people can connect with their religion. And because ABSOC is actually run by students, I think that the sort of like thinking and mindset behind how religion is taught and sort of like spread is completely different to how we've seen it at mosque growing up. It's a lot more about connecting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, connecting with your religion, than it is just learning like the fiqh and the rules, which is obviously incredibly important. But if you do get bogged down in a lot of the rules, I think that you lose that spiritual nature. I think also we need to redefine the misconceptions that we have in Islam, and the way we've been taught from when we were younger is quite a lot to do with just rules and listening to Allah and obeying his commands, but not really why, or like why should we do it and why should we love Allah. And then you get to this state where you're doing things, you're praying your salah, you're fasting, you're doing it just out of fear of Allah, and there's no connection with Allah. It's just you doing that so you don't sort of get into trouble. But I think a really great lecturer who is clearing up these misconceptions is Sheikh Shomali. And the lecture series he's been giving in Stamil has been absolutely incredible. And I just wanted to touch on one of the points he said yesterday. So, in Islam, how there's a really good balance we need to keep between khawf and raja, hope and fear. He made such an incredible point that, like, usually when we think of fear in Islam, it's fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, fear of angering him, fear of going to the hellfire. But Sheikh Shomali said that the fear that Allah is speaking about in Khawf and Raja is not fear of Allah, it's fear of being away from Allah, being away from his presence, him not being in our life. And I just thought that was such a beautiful point.
That is beautiful.
Yeah.
I love how he explains that. And I remember once he explained that when you do a sin, or you don't do something correctly, the way in which Allah reacts is not the same way in which your parents would react. Like, Allah's not sitting there on a throne being like, oh, I'm really angry at Sakina today because she didn't wake up for Fajr or something like that. All the sins that we do are affecting ourselves only. So, and the love that Allah has for us doesn't disappear when we disobey him. Just like in that case, it's the same as our parents. Like, our parents are never going to stop loving us, however much we give them attitude or something like that, you know. But that Allah, what he wants us to do is do good for ourselves and do good so that we are in a clean state in order to reach him. And that's exactly what Sheikh Shman has been talking about, right? Getting closer to God, using this month Ramadan as a time to bring yourself closer to God and not just do those tick boxy, cyclical things that we do every single Ramadan. And I think, speaking of Ramadan, obviously it's really clear that we all try and, you know, do as much as we can in Ramadan, but it kind of lacks in the other months. Like, for example, I'm always like, if I have a little bit of free time in Ramadan, I always think, oh, let me try and do a bit of Jashn Kabir, or, you know, listen to this lecture, or, oh, what about who's reciting Birmingham, like things like that. But we don't really think about that stuff when it comes to other months. So why do you think that is?
I want to say that the obvious answer is because the shaitan is locked away. You know, already you've got that, you know, straight away. You don't have those distractions. The shaitan's telling you, like, do this, do that, that, you know, takes you away from the spirituality, takes you away from praying, takes you away from reading the Quran. And so you have that mood that you're put in Ramzan. It's also that environment, and everyone else around you, your ummah, you know, everyone at mosque is, you know, active. And so you already feel that automatic place of belonging, so that you can go there, you can do your amal, there's programs going on in the day, you know, obviously we're fasting, so it's already a complete, you know, you're taken out of that environment, put in a new environment where you're hungry, you're feeling that spirituality. And so in Ramadan it's easy, you know, for all these reasons, but it's very important to make sure we you know, do it throughout the year. And that's difficult because, you know, you do have those distractions. You don't always have these environments, which is why I was going to add on to one of Mariam's points, that the idea of mosque, the idea of brotherhood, the idea of ummah, you know, in university you have APSOC. In university is different because you choose it. You know, growing up, we always just, you know, we just go to mosque and we're just told, like, do this, do that, like, and we're like, yeah, okay, we do it, and alhamdulillah, it's amazing. But when you get to that stage of university, you know, the age that we're at, we can understand it better, and then we go and choose it for ourselves, which is where that spirituality comes in. And again, when we you know, when we're finished with Ramadan, we need to prioritize and place importance on those environments that you put us in those moods. That way we can pray. That's why congregational prayers are so important. You know, going to Jummah prayers, you know, going to mosque whenever there's programs, and even at home, I think a lot of families, I'd say, they don't place importance on congregational prayers. Like, even just mothers, fathers, and children just praying together, you know, where the father leads, and it's just 2, 3, even 4, 3 people is all you need for a Jamaat. In fact, it might be 2.
Yeah.
2 or 3, I'm not sure. I'm not too sure. I think it's 2. And you got Jamaat already, and, you know, we already know the benefits of praying in Jamaat rather than praying by ourselves. And so, yeah, that's huge. You should definitely look into doing that with your families.
I wanted to add, since we're talking about how Ramadan is a time where we all spiritually connect, I was listening to some lectures by Sayyid Amar Naqvi from Maidaville, and he was saying that in order to get to the spiritual connection, you need to do the physical fast, because it weakens your body and it weakens your nafs. And the spiritual connection is your niyyah. And I touched on it before. Niyyah is like your intention. And if you have the right intention in anything, you'll be able to excel in it. Just if you think about God in what you do, make sure that you have God in everything you do, and you do lead everything in the right direction. And yeah, you like you show the right attributes you need. So for example, you don't show off about different things. If you want to help educate someone, you should do it with the right intention, not to show that, oh, I'm smarter than you. This is here, let me help you on this, but I'm smarter than you. Like you need to make sure you have the right intention, everything. And like, for example, with Sheikh Shamali, what I've learned a lot from him is how you need to fully understand in the Quran. You need to understand your du'as and your amals, because it can just be like lip service, just doing like amals and this and that. Like it doesn't, that you're not going to get anything out of it if you just recite like that. But you should make sure that you should do it, but try to make it intent to understand it better, because that will help you develop yourself, and it just gives you more meaning in what you're doing. Because if you find meaning in what you're doing, it just adds to your purpose. And that's the whole crux, I'd say, of spirituality.
I want to add something that we used to do as Shia. You know, we used to go to the Ahlul Bayt's house. After iftar, we used to go and ask questions to our imams, just general questions about this and that and fiqh issues, and understand the Quran better. That's what Ramadan was for. That was the original purpose, and that's what the environment was created around that. I don't want to get too controversial into, you know, how it was changed and now it's become, you know, things like Taraweeh and stuff like that. But as Shia, that was our purpose. And I think we've lost a lot of that in Ramzan, where we should go and reflect on what the Quran means. Look at the tafsir. Recently, I'd have never done this before, but I recently got a Quran journal where I just sit and I write out the English of the translation of the Quran, and then I go word by word and I try and understand why has Allah used this word here, and go into the tafsir. And then I go to other Qurans to see where the translation is different, and that is helped hugely. You understand so much more in depth about what Allah is trying to tell you, and like him explaining and the understanding of things like the hereafter, and especially spirituality and all these things is hugely beneficial.
I just wanted to add to Niall's point from before about the making a choice to go to ABSOC, and I think that that's really like the key to spirituality. Spirituality is very different to just following rules, because spirituality is a choice. It's an active choice. It's not a passive choice. You have to make that choice to get closer to your Lord. It's not like following a rule where you can do it without even thinking. You have to actually have your mind focused and actually make the choice to go towards Allah. It's not something that can just happen and you don't even realize it.
Yeah, religion, I'd say, like, when I was thinking about this, I feel like religion is, in my opinion, maybe like a pathway which has rules and regulations that help you develop spiritually, if you understand like the things like du'as and Quran and things like that. So if you, that's a pathway you can do, but spirituality in itself is helping you connect to, it's not all about you, it's all about others, it's all about society, and just being in that zone of like, not everything's about you and your ego, it's about everything else around you. And we were talking about ABSOC just now, and I was saying before that you are the average of the 5 people you hang around with. I feel like ABSOCs are a very good environment for this kind of stuff, because it attracts a society that attracts the right kind of people. We're all not perfect, but this society is an area where people come together, decent people come together, and they can have discussions and have critical thinking about different things. And that's like you were saying about in Ramadan, people used to go to the Ahlul Bayt's house and have critical discussions. I feel like in ABSOC, at least at Warwick, we do discussion circles, and that helps us just think about things in a different perspective. And it's not all about your kind of perspective. It's also about, like I was saying, spirituality is about it's not about you, it's not about your ego, it's about everyone else. So that's where I feel like discussion circles and things like that at ABSOCs, it just helps you broaden your knowledge, broaden your openness to different things, and just helps you understand things better with the right kind of people around you.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm going to come back to your point, Niall, about the tips. Do you have anything?
I need to. No, I was going to talk about something else. Go on. You go into tips first.
Go ahead first.
I was going to actually bring up an idea of happiness, which is very tied into spirituality. And there was this study recently that asked about who the happiest people on earth. I want to pose this question to you, all of you guys. Who do you think the happiest people on earth is? Just take a random guess.
People that don't care about materialistic things.
That's a material. Okay, that's good. Yeah. Is there any examples of like cultures that are like very tied down to this?
In Thailand, I know Sheikh Maki was talking to us in the last episode that we went to Mariam about him visiting Thailand, and I think he was living around the monks, and
that's it.
And exactly the way that they were living their lives, and they were so at peace with themselves.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the answer, and that was what they got down to. The Tibetan monks, they said, were the happiest people on earth on paper, because their brains are just full of dopamine and serotonin all the time, even though they're just sitting levitating in mountains. But I wanted to bring up the point that is not Islamic, and that idea of happiness is what is being posed to our youth today and the Western world. That is peace. That's not true peace, and that's not true happiness. The true contentment is being one with Allah, of course, and Islam itself is a very social religion. It means that we need to put up with each other, and I know that it makes it seem like a very negative thing, but it's true. Humans, they can't coexist so peacefully all the time, right? You can agree, like people always have conflict, husband, wife, children, cousins, whoever there is, friends, they will always have conflict with each other, but creating that bond with each other is what it's really, really about. So yeah, I just wanted to say that.
That was really good.
Yeah, that was great. So I wanted to come back to your tip now about the Quran journal, and I think Mike also started a Quran journal this year. So
nice.
Yeah. So tell us about how that helped.
Incredible. Yeah, I think
honestly,
like we lose like the true importance of reciting the Quran, and we get, especially in Ramadan, we're like a lot of people say, okay, if you recite 4 pages after every salah, you can get the whole Quran done, and it becomes very ritualistic, like how many Qurans can you finish, how many surahs can you read, and it's like we're sort of rushing when Ramadan should be about slowing down and actually reflecting, and we're actually trying to get something done as opposed to enjoying the process. And Quran journaling has really helped me enjoy the process. So the way that I do it is I recite the Quran that I recite that day, I'll read the translation, and then one verse that really stands out to me, I'll find the tafsir of that verse, and then I'll write it down and then sort of write my reflections down. And I think those kind of things, as well as helping you, they're actually fun. And when something is enjoyable, you want to do it. I actually look forward to, okay, when am I going to do my Quran journaling today? And I think that makes you connect so much more. Because if you're just doing something just to do it, obviously, naturally, you're not going to be excited for it. You're not going to want to learn from it. You're just doing it. So it's okay, I've done it now. But if you're doing something you actually enjoy, then you actually start to yearn to do it. And I think that's how you sort of get close to Allah. And I think something like Quran journaling or any habits that we sort of do in Ramadan, the reason it's so great is because we do it every day, or we try to do it every day. And then you have sort of a system and a routine, not a bogged down in your routine, but you have a few habits to do every day. And I think bringing this sort of into our daily lives outside of Ramadan, we need to continue these habits. And I believe there's a hadith that says that it takes 40 days to make a habit. So if we start these things at the beginning of Ramadan and we continue them into Shawwal and past that, I think that would be a really great way to continue this throughout Ramadan. But also, I think that sometimes we make our goals a bit too big because it's Ramadan and we feel incredible. Nothing wrong with that. They are incredible goals. But then as soon as Ramadan's over, we sort of forget it's Eid, you have fun, and the next day you're a bit tired and then it's gone. So I think the way to actually continue this past Ramadan is having small but really sustainable habits that we can continue throughout.
Yeah, that's a really good tip. I want to come back to how you said that you really enjoy doing the Quran journaling. And I just want to touch upon the fact that, why do you think that you enjoy it?
So initially the way I started is my flatmate, she's Muslim. So we decided, at the beginning of Ramadan, why don't we do something together? And I think that is something nice about collective worship. So firstly, I think it's really good that it holds you accountable, not in like a scary, like you have to do it, have you done it today? But it's like, oh, like I wonder what she's written in her Quran journal today, like, oh, I fancy doing mine. And then at the end of the day, you share your reflections, and it kind of is that positive boost because you know someone else is doing it as well. But as well as that, like I'm quite artistic, so I like decorating my Quran journal and stuff like that. And I think then you look back on it and it's just like, wow, this is so beautiful. And I think the great thing about Quran journaling and journaling in particular is when you're doing it, you feel incredible because you're reflecting. And when you find things that are interesting to reflect about, you're like, wow. But I think the real beauty of it is then at the end of the month, inshallah, you're going to have a whole book full of reflections. And then when you are feeling spiritually low and disconnected from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you have 30 days worth of reflections to look back on. I just think that's really beautiful.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah.
I really love that. And it's totally linking to Shamali's, you know, taking us towards understanding everything, because you're taking exactly what Allah has told us to do in the month of the holy month of Ramadan, is to read Quran, but you're taking it that step further and trying to understand everything. And you know what, that understanding is going to make you so excited to even read Quran. And you know, there's going to be parts that you'll be like, oh my God, I did that in my journal, and I know exactly what it's talking about. And it's such an amazing feeling.
So I actually went to a class with Fatima Megji recently, and I think this is something we all experience. You know, sometimes when you read the Quran, you recite Quran and then you read the translation, and you're kind of halfway in a story and there's something about punishment. You don't really know what's going on. And then you just get a bit like, I'm not really sure, and you put it down, right? So what she did is she picked Surah Taha, which is such a beautiful story. It's about the story of Prophet Musa, like at the beginning. And so she played the Arabic and she said, look at the translation, and just without like analyzing, using hadiths and stuff, just as you're reading the translation, write down your reflections. We only listened to about the first 20 verses. And you'd get like maybe 15, 16 different reflections about Allah's love and tawakkul. And it's like, if we actually like take the time to learn how to do these things properly, there is so much benefit in them. And I think that, yeah, looking at the translation like that is just really incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I think doing collectively as well, like you're saying, like you did it in a group, you got 15 different ideas like that. Like from my uni course itself, we have a module on design, and we have to work in groups and come up with design ideas and things like that. And one thing the teacher tried to teach us was that when you work together, you have different ideas, different experiences, this and that can help formulate your own opinion and see if a solution in our case was working and viable. And that can be implemented in a lot of things. If you work with a lot of people, you can help generate a lot of ideas, and that can, like I've been saying, critically think about different things and see what you think is the best way to go about things. Because hearing other people's opinions, other people's mindset, everyone's going to be different. So that can help you give a good, open, broad perspective on things. And yeah.
That's on you.
Yeah, definitely. So exactly what you said about it being formed into a habit, and trying to carry it out even after Ramadan. And I think Ramadan's a time that we all sort of prioritize Ramadan the most, and everything else becomes a second, less of a priority. And then you could make the case that, you know, as university students, we're very busy and we have very busy schedules. So how do you think that we can try and fit it into our busy lives, especially since naturally Ramadan is the only time that we sort of put everything else aside? In these other months, how do you think that we can try and implement all of these tips?
I would say that when you're talking about your Quran journal, actually, you was talking about how you do, it's like reminders. You have like 30 days that you've done Quran journal, and if you want to look back at something, you can, and that can just help you remind yourself. And it doesn't have to be reminding yourself of Quran journals and things like that, but you can listen to like different lectures and things like that on the bus to uni, when you're traveling, and when you like when you're listening to these kind of things, it can help you think about things and trigger something that you thought about in like your previous in like Ramadan. So for example, if you remembered a verse because you were listening to something about gratefulness and subhanallah and things like that, it can trigger something, and then it can remind you of how fortunate you are, for example, that you're being able to go to university, being able to do loads of different things that you can. So listening to different things, speaking to the right kind of people can help you at university to develop upon your spirituality. And yeah, that's what I would say.
I want to say that what Mariam was talking about having someone, I read a book called Atomic Habits. I don't know if anyone's read it, but that it talks about an accountability partner, which means someone who you can rely on to like remind you that, okay, you haven't done this, or you need to do this. And so having that partner, you know, to do that with, do the Quran reflections with us is amazing. To then go and talk to them about it, share ideas, and then consolidate that knowledge and the understanding of what you've got. Then you can carry that throughout the year. I mean, I'm sure you'll still be friends after Ramadan. Do you know what I mean? Like they'll always be there, so you can always have these little habits that you carry forward, and then work on together, rather than when you're by yourself. It's hard to just find that motivation to do it this time, or, you know, as Abid was saying, if you just remember a verse and then, you know, go out of your busy schedule and then, you know, go in and reflect on it again. It's easier said than done. You know, you need to find that motivation, and we can all agree that it's very difficult to do that. But having an accountability partner, for example, you know, you call them, the next time you see them, you're like, oh yeah, I thought about this. And then together you're like, oh, it's a motive. Let's go and, like, you know, reflect again, because it was such a motive in Ramadan, and now you're going to do it again. I mean, you know, inshallah, that's the plan, to do that and incorporate those things.
Yeah, and that links to what Abid said about the company that you keep. And like with my experience as well, like I moved from Dubai to the UK, back to the UK for uni, and obviously going to ABSOC alone is not really fun, and you feel very, very nervous. But like having people there that really push you, and, you know, even going to places with your friends, you obviously enjoy it more. And even if Mariam and I, sometimes we don't really feel like going, but we'll push each other and
Yeah.
enjoy it at the end, even if it's a very, very long way away and we have to buses to get there. But I think that accountability is so important, and accountability with the right people as well. And also, you're talking about Atomic Habits. Sheikh Shamali has a podcast called This Is Not a Book Club, and he analyzes that book amazingly. I think that episode just came out.
Nice.
So yeah, it's really, really good. So you should have a look at that.
I do.
Yeah. So if no one else has anything to add, then I think that brings us to the end of the show. Thanks everyone for your great input. It was really amazing. And thank you for everyone.